Resident Evil Village is one of the absolute best games of 2021. A couple snacks here and there in the game, but throughout, a incredibly worthy follow-up to 2017's Resident Evil VII Biohazard. Let's get into it. Before we get this video off, if you can do me a huge favor by hitting the like button, sub to the channel, and ding the notification bell. That way you stay up to date on all the latest and greatest content that comes from this channel. And other than that, we're going to talk about Resident Evil Village, or Resident Evil 8, or RE VIII/Village, which, you know, the 8 is an anagram within Village to, you know what I mean, it's Roman numerals. Anyways, we're going to be talking about Resident Evil Village and why it is honestly one of the best games of 2021. Capcom came through and delivered on all, like, they just literally fired on all cylinders. There's a couple hang-ups here and there where, granted, I think they could be, you know, it could be fixed, but I think for the sake of how they went about creating this game and for the pacing of the narrative, I understand why it's still in there. And we'll dive into that in the review. But yeah, everyone, I'm Mekel Kasanova, Hawaii content creator, host of Hawaii's #1 podcast, the Kasanova Podcast. I stream every single week on twitch.tv/Mekel Kasanova, so catch me over there. And yeah, I had a great time with this. I actually streamed this and beat it within 3 streams straight through Resident Evil Village over on my Twitch channel. So if you want to catch the playthroughs, you can catch it over there, or you can catch the re-uploads here on YouTube. I had a great time with it, man. It's honestly, compared to Resident Evil 7, it's not scary. There's one part that's terrifying, but other than that, it really doesn't have the scare factor that Resident Evil 7 has. It has the oh shit factor, but not the scare factor. We're going to go ahead and dive into it. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into the review of Resident Evil Village. Resident Evil Village picks up 3 years following the horrific events in Louisiana following the Baker incident in Resident Evil VII Biohazard. Ethan and Mia Winters have moved to Europe and have a daughter named Rosemary, and dealing with the trauma that they experienced with the Bakers. Ethan and Mia are constantly arguing and have not been able to truly move forward in their relationship and effectively their lives as a whole. Shortly after, Ethan puts Rose to sleep in her crib and a special ops group shoots up their house, hitting Mia several times, and then Chris Redfield, the man who injured Albert Wesker and the Old Umbrella Corporation, ruthlessly murders Mia in front of Ethan and takes Rose away with his team referring to her as the Subject, and capturing Ethan in the process. When Ethan awakens, he is left stranded in a snowy area with nowhere to go except towards an abandoned village and terrifying castle. So one of the underlying themes I really enjoyed about the story of Resident Evil 8 is the fact that there's a level of duality between the main character, Ethan Winters, and also the main villain, you know, the main villain of the story. Basically, of what a parent will go to, like what lengths they will go to in order to save and get back their child. It's something that I don't really feel like a lot of games touch on, and honestly, there's only 2 games I can think of off the top of my head that really have the central core focus of the story being about, you know, protecting or regaining your child, and that's Near Gestalt, or Near as we had it in the West back in 2010, and also Heavy Rain, which came out in 2010 as well. Truly thinking about it though, Heavy Rain really put the main protagonist character through some serious trauma, even losing fingers so that he can get his kid back. So yeah, there's a lot of similarities there, but anyway, that's a core theme. Back to the review. Gameplay. If you play Resident Evil 7, then you'll be right at home here, as the gameplay is almost entirely lifted and placed into Village, with a few exceptions of bringing back a merchant with almost the exact same functionality as the merchant from Resident Evil 4, with a few alterations here and there. What sets Village apart from all other entries, including Resident Evil 7 to an extent, is its semi, and I put a strong emphasis on semi, open world design that actually begs for you to explore every nook and cranny that you see, even though the game is technically on rails of where it wants you to go and how you complete the 4 houses towards the main story leading into the ending of the game. It still gives you many side sections for you to dive into as you see fit and how you want, with numerous rewards for exploring and puzzle solving. The gunplay and general gameplay as a whole is the same in Village as it is in 7, except with faster gunplay and overall tighter controls. You can upgrade weapons just as you could in 7, although this time you can upgrade your weapons at the Duke's locations, which allow you to upgrade everything from the damage your weapon does, the rate of fire, reload speed, and ammo capacity. You're able to buy new weapons and weapon schematics from the Duke, such as pipe, grenade schematics, and mine schematics, in order to craft them, and also buy health restoratives, which increase in price as you buy them. The Duke also cooks you food if you gather the required ingredients from the local flora and fauna, so never sell them off, as once you have what's needed and can get the Duke to cook a dish for you, then you can get any number of stat buffs, from increased movement speed to a massive reduction in damage, while blocking to permanent health increases and more. If you have any items that you don't need or want, then you can sell them to the Duke. Each time you defeat a boss, you are given a crystallized essence of them, which you can sell for a higher price, which makes getting more items from the Duke that much easier. Another important thing to do as you progress in the game is make sure you purchase bigger weapon cases as they become available, similar to what you would do in Resident Evil 4, which are available from the Duke, and usually after every 1 or 2 boss fights, as you'll need to manage your loadouts and items effectively, kind of a Tetris-like how do you store them or place it or align it within the attached case so that you can, have more room to store more stuff, because as you progress you're going to get more and more things in this game. You get a wide range of weapons, from various pistols to shotguns to grenades, and even the series staple, overpowered yet limited available ammo for the Magnum to use as you continue in the game. Each weapon fires very differently, and based on where you aim will also determine how much damage you'll end up doing to the enemy. Given how agile enemies are in this game, I'd always recommend aiming for their legs to drop them first if you can, and then going for headshots, due to the fact that the enemies tend to bob and weave their heads to make sure that you don't get headshots in. I think this is also a reason that the game isn't VR compatible, because the amount of movement from enemies compared to Resident Evil 7 is dramatically increased, which could have been very difficult to deal with in the first-person perspective of VR. I did find that Village is not at all a challenging game, which is kind of interesting to say, save for, the Lycan introductions. I mean, enemies are relatively easy to kill, although I do think the game compensates for their easiness with having plentiful enemies to deal with at a given moment. I mean, going even so far as to say even the final boss is kind of a cakewalk. I find some of the mid-bosses to be more difficult than the main bosses that you deal with. I mean, even Lady Dimitrescu is not that difficult of a boss to deal with. And speaking of Lady Dimitrescu, all the promotional material would have you think that she is a major part of the story, and you're over and done with her within the first 40 minutes to an hour of the game. So if you're thinking you're going to get a whole lot more of her, you're not going to get more of Lady Dimitrescu. And I think that was kind of the bait and switch of the swerve of the marketing that Capcom intentionally went for. Although she's a very interesting character, especially her lore background. If you go and get the chance to read more into her, definitely something I think you should check out on your spare time, because Alcina Dimitrescu is quite the character. And getting back to the gameplay, you're constantly given ammo and money to buy additional ammo from the Duke as you progress through the game, especially if you explore all the nooks and crannies to find more stuff. The pacing of the game is rock solid, as you'll never really run into any low points or slow points in the game, except for the beginning of the game, which is, narratively speaking, slow, and the second house Benevendo, which, that's done for plot reasons as well. I don't want to give that away, but it's terrifying. It's like, being on the world's best roller coaster ride that never lets up all the way to the end, and unlike other Resident Evil games that usually fall flat at the end of the game, Village continues on incredibly strongly with better and better environments, enemies, puzzles, challenges, and more to keep you on your toes. Also, this game brings back the Mercenaries mode, so hey, that's enough said right there. Graphics. The game looks simply stunning on PlayStation 5 with some amazing HDR and ray tracing going on, with 4K visuals and a frame rate that fluctuates from 60 frames per second to 45 frames per second. I would have preferred to have a locked 60 frames per second on PlayStation 5 as it is on the Xbox Series X and PC. However, I cannot complain too much as it still is solid with the performance all around. From the snow effects to the fog and wind and more, Resident Evil Village is not at all disappointing, creating one of the most visually stunning games of this generation. We all know that character that everyone is lusting after, which is Alcina Dimitrescu, and all of her 9'7" glory, yet she isn't the only amazing looking character in this game. There are several characters from Heisenberg to Donna Benevento to best looking of all, Chris Boulder Punching Bastard Redfield, who actually looks like Chris this time around compared to what he looked like in Resident Evil 7. There's so many details in the character models, from their hair to clothing and even the details in their clothes. The Duke? Oh man, what can I say about this lovably insane obese big boy? The Duke is such an amazing character both in his design and in how he is overall as a character. The one area of the game that got a massive upgrade from Resident Evil 7 is in the variety of enemies that you end up facing, since you aren't fighting just the molded, actually technically you're not really fighting the molded period, but you are fighting enemies that are influenced by the mold, which is central to the story of this game. And you're fighting lichens and all the way to Frankenstein-esque Walking Dead types to literal sword-wielding Walking Deads to ghouls and more. During combat, you'll see that when you shoot enemies with your gun or slice them with your knife, that their blood will end up on your weapons and hands, and it's just such a great little attention to detail that so many games these days, including Call of Duty, just don't do at all. Weapon reloading is incredibly realistic, even down to when you upgrade the reload speed and end up watching how Ethan goes on to reload his guns faster in a more tactically realistic way. He's not on the level of John Wick, but you get the point. Standout levels in this game, it has to be House Benevento and Heisenberg's factory, as they are the most atmospheric locations that you will end up past Castle Dimitrescu. Audio. The music in this game is so good at setting the terrifying tone of dread that you will end up feeling as you progress through the game, especially in areas that turn off the lights like House Benevento and Heisenberg's factory. When walking around in these areas, there are times when you will cut a corner and the music will just cease to play, and then as you continue down that long winding corridor, the music will suddenly kick in with a frantic horror-filled melody which will continue to put you on edge. When outside of these areas and the village itself and nature, the environments have very effective ambient sounds with a great number of sounds coming from the wind, running waters and babbling brooks, wildlife, and of course the monsters that you'll end up facing. The voice acting in this game is seriously good, especially from characters like the Duke and Mother Miranda being some of the best, with the voice of Alcina Dimitrescu being the most amazing and standout. The voice of Heisenberg is such a great performance as he has such a presence about him and pulls off a very Nicolas Cage style delivery and cadence for the character. One voice that shocks me is the decision to change, yet again, the voice of Chris Redfield, which is funny because when I did my interview with Jeff Shine about a year ago for Resident Evil 3 Remake, because he voiced Carlos in that game, it's funny because I hinted at, he would be a good Chris Redfield, which is funny because now when I think about his reaction when I said that, it makes sense why he acted the way he did, because he's actually the voice of Chris Redfield in this game. Like, they changed his voice again, and honestly I think Jeff does an amazing job as Chris Redfield because he nails it, being with his gruff and scraggly voice, and he suits the bill. I mean, he looks like Chris Redfield and he sounds like him, so hey, it worked out. Downsides. The main downside to this game is the one epic part of the game, and that's when you go down the elevator for House Beneviento. That section alone is one of the best parts of any Resident Evil game ever. And yet, after the first time experiencing it, the lust of it goes away rather quickly, as you come to realize it's only a 15-minute section that is effectively scripted, and once you've gotten past the first shocker of dealing with it, you want to skip it entirely, and unfortunately there is no option to, and it can make the game feel like it's dragging. Another section of the game that feels bogged down is the introduction of the game, as well as the beginning part of the village, which is another scripted set of events that are rather slow starting. Dealing with the intro part of the Lycans is tough to deal with because there's no clear-cut idea of where to go and what to do, especially with this incredibly claustrophobic point of view and how slow and sometimes clunky the game feels when you begin, and how intentionally off the aiming and firing of the pistols is in this section, because let's face it, you get your fingers cut off, so you're experiencing a character's going through shock. So that's why it feels kind of off until you start getting into the game proper like. Another downside, in my opinion, is the fact that this game, with a few exceptions, shies away from actual horror and is way more action oriented. I mean, narratively, with the context of the story, it actually makes sense. However, it's a bit of a letdown considering how eerily and terrifying 7 was, and how perfectly Capcom nailed survival horror in that entry, only to go back to a rather campy action game that is essentially a retread of Resident Evil 4 due to complaints from gamers. Now, if I'm Capcom developing this game, I can understand them wanting to address issues that fans can have with their games, such as, feeling too claustrophobic or things not, being as smooth as they should be. What I don't understand is why you would change your formula for your game just because the folks who wouldn't play the previous game demanded that this game be less scary. Who are you catering to? Newer fans or people who have been with your franchise for over 25 years? Come on, Capcom. Aside from those nitpicks, the game is a solid go through and through. The wrap up. Resident Evil Village is one of the absolute best games of 2021, and is yet another title to make it into my top 10 games of the year. It nails it in so many categories, from gameplay to narrative and more, and even with a slow start and a mid-game slowdown in one of the houses, Village remains a top-tier game through and through, with incredible gameplay, stunning high-fidelity visuals, an excellent OST that's atmospheric, top-tier voice acting, and a narrative that hooks you start to finish. Resident Evil Village is a game you must play. And that's it. That's the review for Resident Evil Village. I played this on the PlayStation 5. I was not given a review copy of this game from Capcom. For whatever reason, Capcom doesn't really give me, well, technically it's not Capcom themselves, because I've worked with Capcom actually in promotion of the demo, giving away codes for the castle and the village demos for Resident Evil Village. So I did work directly with Capcom on that, but they do have a third-party company that handles review copies, and that company for years has just never given me a copy of any Capcom game. So it's frustrating, but I deal with it. I still love the game. I love Capcom as a company. So I figured I'm gonna review this game because I'm looking forward to it. I might as well spend my own money on it, which I have no problem with doing. Even if I get a review copy of a game, I do buy a physical or digital copy of the game as well to give away to my audience, because I want to support the developers. And Resident Evil Village is just absolutely an amazing game, and I highly, highly, highly recommend it as a game you guys should check out. But that's my thoughts. What do you guys think? Did you enjoy Resident Evil Village? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Did you feel that it, should have had more horror in it? Do you think they should have stuck to the formula that they have in Resident Evil 7? Whatever your thoughts are, let's get the conversation going in the comment section down below. Also, if you want to take the conversation further, we do have Discord as well as Guilded. Links for both of those in the description below. Also, if you want to pick up this game, I will have Amazon affiliate links down below as well. With all that being said, I'm Mekel Kasanova, Hawaii content creator, host of Hawaii's #1 podcast, the Kasanova Podcast. I stream every single week on twitch.tv/Mekel Kasanova, so catch me over there. And also, if you've gotten this far and you haven't already, make sure you hit the sub button, like the video, ding the notification bell, that way you stay up to date on all the latest and greatest content that comes from this channel, because I'm very grassroots. Everything that you see that's from this channel is 100% me. I do all the recording, the editing, the script writing, the streaming, literally everything is me. I'm a one-person team, so your support allows me to keep doing this as my career. So yeah, all that being said, I'm out. Deuces wild, too sweet, be the elite. I'll see you on the next one. Peace. Mahalo for making it to the end of the video. I really appreciate your support by those of you who like the videos, who watch them, who subscribe. And for those of you who are my Patreon supporters, thank you for your continued support, because you help make this possible. If you enjoy my work and you'd like to support what we do have Patreon on patreon.com/Mekel Kasanova. We also have Coffee as well as Subscribestar. So there's various methods if you want to support the work that we do here. We also have channel membership, so make sure you check that out. That way you get up to date on all the latest and greatest content that comes here, and first, and exclusive content as well. And if you enjoy the work that I do and you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel. So with that being said, Mekel Kasanova, Hawaii content creator. I hope to see you on the next one. If you haven't already, make sure you hit the subscribe button and ding the notification bell. And all that being said, I'll see you on the next one. Peace.